All right, welcome to Nested Loops. We're doing Shape Up by Basecamp, and we're going to do Chapter 5, so I'll turn it over to Diego. Let's go.
All right, let's see. Try to figure out how to.
I'm going to click a button to present.
All right, so let's do this one. All right, cool. So it works?
It does.
All right. So I'm not sure if what you see.
So I see your full. I see the thing in the middle and the small things on the left.
Okay.
But I can zoom in the screen. Yeah, there you go.
Now it's full screen?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Why do we go here? Okay, got it. All right, so today we're talking about roots and rabbit holes, chapter 5. And the goal is to go from a rough form idea to a well-defined solution. So we're still in the shaping up of the idea phase of the project. Pretty much we're still requiring, we know what we want to build. We're just trying to make sure that it can be built in an appetite. It is not gonna go over budget, and we have considered all possible risks, or most of the possible risks. So we have the element of the solution. Our goal is to have patches for potential rabbit holes and clear boundary about what we're going to do and what we're not going to address with this project. And pretty much the goal in this space is to reduce risk, pitfalls, and time wasters. We know that we cannot plan for everything, but it doesn't mean we can look for pitfalls. So we're still shaping up the work, right? And we want us to shape it to fit in a fixed time windows. And we want to remove any possible problem that might take extra weeks to solve and burn the time that we have budgeted for this appetite. And sometimes problems have no apparent solution, so it's very good to try to address them ahead of time, because it's unfair to come up with a project and then leave to the developer, designer, while they're in a time crunch, to kind of come up with ad hoc design and ad hoc solutions that might have repercussions that are not originally, that have not been considered. So our goal in this phase is to find and eliminate as many problems that we can find, that we can think about, so that when we bring this idea to the betting table, it's a safe bet to do. Also, for as free as all as possible, we're going to still leave some breathing room for the unexpected. And part of this is because we want to give confidence to everybody in the betting room, the betting table, that what they're betting on is something that's actually doable. So this is just like a chart. The kind of development that we want is one that we can do like in 6 weeks, right? And not something that might have like a bunch of different problems that are going to delay into multiple appetites, because that's not how, at least in N3rst signal, that's how they would deal with this. So we're going to look for rabbit holes. Do we miss anything? Are we making technical assumptions that are unfair? One way to analyze this is to analyze the solution, is to walk through a use case in slow motion. And you can do this with wireframing, sketching, blackboard, whiteboard, and go from one step to the next. I click here, this happened. I click here, this happened. And we can ask, does this require new technical work that we've never done before? Or are we making an assumption of how the parts fit together? Or, we assume a design solution that exists that we couldn't come up with ourselves. So which this might be solved by bringing somebody who's an expert or in whatever area we're touching. Or is there a hard solution? Is there a hard decision we should settle in advance so it doesn't trip up the team? Which could be some kind of back-end implementation. We need the queuing system, and rather than leaving up to the developers, during the sprint, the appetite, to figure out how to set it up, which one to use. During the appetite, you just do all the work ahead, and a little bit. And some of this, it feels a little bit of like a waterfall to me. But again, we're not talking a 2-year waterfall. We're talking about a 6-month waterfall. 6 weeks period where we try to come up with the simplest possible solution for our problem, and something that is easy to, I shouldn't say easy, that it's fair to be completed within the fixed time that we have available to us. I got something else out here. There's also maybe an assumption about use cases. We might do come up with a use case, a solution for something that says, the users of our site, of our product are going to do this, and that is our assumption, where our users don't actually use the product in a specific way. So there are some of the rabbit holes are both technical, but also they could be on the usability side. And so they have this case study of the to-do groups. And there was a hole in the concept. So what they decided to do is they have to-do items. And then they decided, it'd be cool if we can group them. And I don't know if you cannot see my cursor. All right. So you can see there's some loose item, and then there's some group to-do items. And you can, it will be a header for each group, and all those items are grouped under the header. And during the appetite, or maybe during this period, they figured out, something we haven't considered is generally when you check something, all the completed items show up at the bottom. But now, because you have both grouped and ungrouped items, how do you show the completed item for this project? Do you have a completed section below with a copy of each group? So you have completed section, group A, and then a completed item underneath, or you show each completed item at the bottom of each group, and pretty much they can come up with 3 or 4 different solutions. And again, it would not be fair for the team that is developing under time constraint to come up with this solution, to make a decision, to run it out, what other consequences would this have? It's putting a lot of unknown into the project. So they pointed out a specific path as part of the concept. Eventually they say, well, we are going to do all of them at the bottom. And in parentheses, we're gonna have the group labels. Rather than address and redesign completely how this functionality that to do will work. They come up with a solution that's like, it fits the current usage. It doesn't require extra development because like right now, when you click it, check something, it goes already at the bottom. All we have to do now is just, we go to the bottom and we just add this group label. Let's see, did I miss anything? Yeah, and pretty much like they'll call this attached, and they'll point out to it in the final document saying, this is what we have right now as a solution for this design problem, and it can be addressed in a future iteration, in a future appetite. Another thing that's important about this phase, besides like it's been like use cases that we haven't considered, technical problems, assumptions, is declare what is not going to be part of this appetite of this solution. Again, they have an example where they have a group notification. So they add a notification, like I want to notify one person or all the programmers about this event. And they say, well, that would be really useful in other places to have like assign a project to a group or do a whole bunch of stuff to a group. But it wasn't part of the appetite or the original solution. All they wanted to address was notification. So while all these other stuff would be useful, like as a general solution for all kind of notification, all kind of grouping functionality, they just say is not part of our current problem, and we are not going to address it. So we're going to address just notification for like a group notification, and not any other type of group thing, which I think is generally it's a smart idea, because like it's very easy to come up with a solution on an idea that could be generalized across the board, but then the scope of your project explodes exponentially, and the complexity and all of the design consideration, like how like grouping of like assigning cards, like if it's just that kind of a project, or assigning, or even just like creating different type of grouping. You can go like down a rabbit hole very, very quickly if you're not careful. And yeah, so like it's a really good idea to declare what is not going to be part of this appetite or in this project. By the way, I don't know if you guys can hear the rumbling. Sounds like there's a storm coming very, very close. Like it's getting dark very quickly. Also, as part of this, because we want to make this idea and this solution as tight as possible, we're gonna cut back on all the nice things to have. These are like cool ideas that would be nice to have, but the feature is still useful and valuable without it. Therefore, all this stuff is not needed. You could mention it as nice to have to the developer, but not necessary. These are our dirty, hairy kind of stuff. There's like, we got like a color-coded grouping. That would be nice, but you can still use grouping without color coding. So, and also you might need a design consideration that could derail the project. I mean, how do you assign the colors to a group? Where, like a color picker, like what kind of library you need? You need another plugin. And all the kind of stuff can balloon and eat up some of your time budget for very, very quickly. So all the nice to have stuff the automate cutback, they can be like mentioned, but definitely are not part of the requirements. So at some point, you're gonna present to a technical expert what you are working on. And in this phase, it's still like when you present to the technical expert what you're doing, it's still, your idea is still very malleable, but your presentation to the expert is not. So what you want to do is like, you're not going to create a PowerPoint presentation of what the idea and the solution is, but you are going to give your version of the solution unfiltered, unchanged as a whole, so that the technical expert, they can now verify your technical assumption or contradict them, and an assumption also of the current customer behavior over its assumption of technical aspect of what you're doing. So and again, like the way you will present is that this is just an idea, not something that's coming down the pipe yet. What do you think? And when you ask, is it possible? You shouldn't ask, is this possible? Because we know that everything is possible. It just takes time. But is this one specific thing possible in 6 weeks? Which is a very different question. And actually, while you're presenting this idea in full, because you want to make sure that this person gets the full idea, first of all. You're gonna look for risks that can blow up the project, with any kind of time bombs, which could be, since I brought up stuff with the queuing system, you're thinking about using a queuing system that doesn't have naming queue. I don't know, something like that. While your project might need name queues or might need some kind of push versus pull method of using the queue. And again, because the idea is still malleable, you want to use whiteboards and not a presentation. Because if your assumption is wrong, you want to be able to work it with the technical expert and change it up and make it better with him. And again, going back, you're going to stick to the idea in the presentation, in the initial presentation, and do have any insight to how to either simplify graphically or approach the problem differently. Because if that is the case, you might have to take a second round at this problem, right? So you might have either validate your approach to discover some problem and send it back for another round of shaping. So once you de-risk, you've gone through all this process. You have looked for design flaws. You've looked for small things, as well as big technical decision or use cases that might be different from what you're thinking. Now you have a roughly formed solution with, you went from a roughly formed solution with potential risk to a solid idea that we feel confident that you can do in a 6-week period. And we're ready to make the transition from privately shaping, because so far it's only been you and maybe asking a couple of people for what they're thinking and input, to gain feedback from an inner circle to the presenting the evidence table. And we're ready to write up a document with clear boundaries that spells out the solution for people that have less context. Because you have been working with this for a while, and thinking about for a while, and even presented it to a couple of people for technical confirmation. It doesn't mean that everybody else understands what you're talking about or what kind of problem you're solving or the solution. So now you have to write a document that kind of explains what this is, why, what are the possible pitfalls, what is the boundaries within like every possible pitfall in the project, so people can understand and evaluate it and feel confident about betting on it. And this is the document that is used to lobby for resources, collect wider feedback, or simply catch the idea for another time. And I realized I spoke very fast. So that was the chapter.
Well, no problem. So I think what's really different is really the context of making it fit in the appetite. Like when we're cutting risk, what is it like when we're cutting out like when we were saying what's out of bounds. Everything is always back to I think everyone asks these kinds of questions, but they don't go back and say, does it fit in the 6 weeks or the appetite? Like when we were saying like color coding, that's good. You had the bullet like, but the design consideration might take a lot of time. That little graph where it was just the bump that fits in 6 weeks versus the bump with the long tail that runs into the 18 weeks or whatever. So it's always focusing back to, does this fit in our time limit? Does it fit in our appetite? Just the idea of, that's a nice idea, but it's out of the appetite. I think it's the constant refocus back to that makes this. The only problem I have with this is it seems like for some things that don't already exist, you kind of need to spike. He doesn't mention here, it's like, when you say is it possible, sometimes you have to spike. Like the thing I'm doing now, I have to look at these APIs to see if we can do what we need to do within the constraints that we have.
I think possibly spikes are part of this iteration. Also depends on who's presenting the idea, right? And the functionality. Like a designer versus a developer are gonna have two different take on it. And that's why I think like they have present to the technical expert. What if you're the technical expert? You know that kind of part, but you might not know the usability or the design portion of it. So the technical expert in that case becomes the designer, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have done like the spike as part of the de-risking of the project. The thing that I'm more curious about, and I guess we'll see if they address it. Like not everything is big is a 6 weeks project, right? There are 1 week project, 2 weeks projects, or less, right? So how do they fill the rest of the 6 weeks?
Yeah, we should write down all the questions to ask Ryan at the end, because we actually have that option. So I was thinking they mentioned earlier, it's like they tend to do this like in parallel. We have people that do shaping while other people actually run the 6 week, they don't call it sprint, whatever their unit is, and so they kind of try to do this in parallel. So you have guys constantly working during the 6 weeks and then guys constantly shaping and setting up the betting table. So I guess they have nonstop. And I'm curious how they break that down. Like at some point in shaping, you need a spike. And so if it's just like the tech guy, if it's just like the designer guy, he might need to say, hey, I need programmer for 2 weeks to figure this out. So I'm curious to how they schedule and keep everything. It's related to your question. How do you keep it all going? How do you divvy up resources? But as far as I can tell, they mention like, a team is like 1 designer, 2 programmers. So maybe they have like a 6th thing, but they have like 30 programmers, and they have another team that's this designer and those programmers.
Also, like how much does this process really take? Because I would guess like for each document would be at least 20 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like between coming up with a solution, really figure out, like going through design, different screenshot or wireframe or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of design ahead time, and maybe that's what fills up whatever is time you have left in the appetite. Or are the shaper a different group of people, right? Than the developers.
I mean, I get the impression that shaping tends not to be a developer. At least the way they do it. I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I find this also interesting because I've mentioned, some of my side project ideas. Mine's so hardware focused. Like I'm sitting there trying to figure out, I want to do something, but I need to see if this is even possible. And I went to Home Depot on Wednesday and bought some hardware, try to build some stuff. So mine's like really this whole feasibility scope thing, and also I'm trying to carve my own MVP. What is the minimum thing to prove that I'm on something? But even that, I'm part of. I'm going to have to build a bunch of hardware prototypes, of which I'm starting to think maybe I should 3D print this. Because of the stuff I'm doing. So I'm curious to see what I can map from this into my other thing, because ultimately as a side fun thing, it's really hard for me to figure out how much time I have. And I can really get out of scope. Like my big ideas are like, oh, if it actually worked, that's a lot of scope. But I still have to figure out where to go. So
generally, I like the process so far. I think it's something that we have done internally, right? To a certain level, I think we can definitely pick up on some stuff, some items from this process, and use it for ourselves. The one thing that is very different is the 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a considerable amount of time. It's quite a bit. And it's above what I feel comfortable judging a project. Like, meaning, if I think something will take 4 weeks, right? It's probably as big of a chunk of functionality that I can. I wouldn't say accurately, but like estimate. Like a 6 weeks project, it feels fairly massive. That might have a lot of risk potential, right? Unless it's like, it's a lot of stuff just to crank it, because there's you touch a lot of code, a lot of front-end development, a lot of stuff, right? It just takes time. I feel 6 weeks it gets in a fuzzy zone.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like out loud. Like it's like Brett, how do you feel about like?
So what it makes me think about is estimating a project that took a year for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it is something that we do. I mean, not that I've done it at Hedgeye, but it is something that people do. You have to think about it a lot.
Right.
There is more risk, but I'm actually thinking about it in terms of like a web agency. You're requested to do some big project. You're going to rewrite delta.com. What are your options? You have to estimate this large project. Maybe you can get together and try to break the project into smaller bits with them, but they might not agree to that. So you're estimating this $500,000 project that's going to take a year, and there's risk, and that's it. You think about it a lot. That's what I think about is, I agree with the whole 6 weeks being more difficult to estimate, but I also think that it's something that people do on a regular basis. I also don't know if this directly ties to it, but like, think about the estimates that like Boeing does for $52 billion across 10 years. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I just think it just,
Yeah, but that's terrible. That's why the government's trying so hard to figure out how to make it work, because it doesn't work.
right. So I guess there's a certain circumstance where there's a lot of risk and you're just stuck with that. I don't, yeah.
And in fact, kind of related to that one. So the government themselves has been moving towards Agile while I was still there, and after I left, I know. And I saw this article going, Agile is not fast enough still. And I go, I guarantee you those contractors really aren't that agile. They're relatively agile. But again, I think the real key here is in like extreme programming, you are supposed to do what they say they're doing. Like, hey, we didn't fit the iteration, do we abort it? We have that problem that we mentioned earlier, that sometimes we have something that just keeps rolling over the next iteration, and we don't think about it, right? In XP, you're supposed to cut that stuff off, fix it, cut it off. Don't let, we have those things that run like 4 iterations. It's just like, we just kind of let it roll. We haven't built any process to say, hey, this really is 2 iterations too long. We just keep hoping next one. Well, sometimes when we get concerned enough, we cut it off. And so they're trying to say, look, this is it. We'll come in the betting table. It fits in the 6 weeks. If it doesn't pass, we might not renew this. That's the thing that we almost never do. But I think the difference they do is it's their product, so they can cut scope. We tend not to get, well, guess what? We're not going to do this part of the thing that they asked us to. We don't have that option, so we kind of have to roll.
Yeah.
So they might change. Like, I don't know. Let's say it's gone wrong 5th week of their 6-week cycle. They might decide, okay, well, then don't ship this. And that's okay for them. We get both, and this is the problem with the government. We get the deadline and the scope. And we generally don't get to cut the scope. Or sometimes we negotiate. We get to cut the scope or we get an extension. But for the most part, we don't really get to cut the scope of the date. So I think in reality, everyone ends up going over on one or both of those. So
right.
It happens in reality. Everyone says you can't change it, but we do. And they're just trying to beat that. It's like, we're not even going to say we're change it. Look, we're going to get this set up and it's going to fit in 6. And we might legitimately not renew this. So let's get this right. And I think that we're not going to renew this after the 6 weeks, which, I remember Alex going, oh my God, you mean you just cut this out? It's like, no. The kind of stuff we do, if we did 7 weeks and say we're not going to renew it, that's not happening.
Yeah. No, but like, all right, let me go back. Like for me, it's actually interesting because like 6 weeks are definitely significant. It's a significant amount of time that a team can build a lot of stuff.
But if you think about our epics,
even for a developer, right? But like, let's say like you have 2 people, like a designer and like 2 developers working on something for 6 weeks. Yeah. That is a big project.
Right, but if you think about it, we have epics that run that long easily. We have epics that run twice that.
Yeah.
We have, epics that are 4 times that. And then, of course, we have things like products which are like a week or 2. So it's like we have a variety of stuff. But I think almost all our epics run long. So maybe we could do something better. I think the fact is that we don't walk in going, this is a 6 week. Well, maybe Terry does. She probably looks at, well, this many points, and I guesstimate that this is 7 week. It's sort of like when Brett's saying, hey, I estimate this to be this long, and I know you want this by September. So we kind of think at that level sometimes, but
I think that the weekly sprint has some disadvantages because you're trying to get certain stuff that are bigger fit in a week. Mm-hmm. So you might end up with solutions that are not optimal, right? Other places I worked at, we had 2 weeks and 2 months. And the 2 month cycle, the 2 month cycle was for releases, but the 2 weeks was for development. So what will happen, like you in the 2 month cycle release, you will have 4 sprints of development being deployed. And that was because there was a 2 weeks of QA behind every sprint, or was it 1 week? I think it was 2 weeks. So everything will be like you imagine, like you got 2 weeks for your development. Generally, everything, all the project we were able to finish them within, like from start to finish, all the features within those 2 weeks. It will go into a staging environment where the QA people will like QA everything, and then like you'll be working on the next batch. And after 4 weeks, pretty much the first 3 weeks of first 3 sprint will be what it would be deployed to production, because the last 2 weeks of development will be still in QA period, and then we'll go into the next deployment schedule. The good thing about that environment was like everything was like thoroughly QA, but there was a elevated risk with deployment.
But at the tail end.
And that's it. And that was the meaning of life, as we
42.
Like we are now considered as self-enlightened.
Yeah.
Right?
We know everything. And all the money's coming in now.
There you go. I'm not gonna repeat myself. This is just for you, Emil.
Yeah. But no, that's cool. That's interesting. Like I said, save up your questions. You should probably write them down after every one, and we can ask Ryan about them at the tail end when we have our Q&A, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, you got to remember to write them down. All right. So, any other comments, questions, Alex, Jeff?
I just enjoyed. I thought I'm still just enjoying the book, and I mean, it's interesting going through. I can't help, but compare it to what we do on each chapter I read, and sort of finding. I agree with Diego that there are a lot of similarities, but yeah, I mean, I definitely share the same thoughts that.
Like we do a lot of the same components.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the arranging and the structure, and I really do think it is the focus on appetite and then betting. It's like we never get to bet.
Right.
We get told you got to build this.
Right.
Right.
And that's probably true for, depending on the shop. This is not a good fit for you. Like if you're a government contractor, this is not a good fit for you. Government tells you what they want.
By the way, like the thing about slowing down and go step by step is something that actually we do, and that's where we find most of the issues. Like some of the stuff is funny because like we don't find out about until you see the wireframe.
Yeah.
And you go through the process. You don't find that's when we find the most holes.
Yeah.
So
for us, for user, usually yeah. And actually, I think it's valuable. All the charts we've done, all the charts that Jeff has been making lately, I think those are really helpful. And the fact that we've changed that picture now, like 3-4 times? That's, I think, analogous to some of their stuff of trying to, or just the thing we just discovered now, you don't have to be logged in.
Right.
That wasn't clear until you started coding. Wait a minute, I don't have to do this. It made a lot of sense at the picture level. But because it's abstract and it's like, oh, there's no reason he needs to be logged in for this part. Like you didn't get that until you started coding it last week.
Right.
And there's always that amount of stuff. I find it's hard. Like I don't know. I think What might help me is maybe doing an abbreviated form of their write-up sheet. Like what the problem is. I think that might be available. Like for my little hardware project. Maybe that's what I should write these up before I start building too much. Though again, I have to figure out what's even feasible. I have a lot more exploration than I see in this process to figure out if I can even do the thing I want to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't even know exactly how it's going to be. I just have an idea of what kinds of things I want to do. So I don't know if that's as good as for such an expert. And which I guess is not something they see a lot. They don't have a lot of, hey, it must be fun kind of project. All right, if there's no other questions, then I guess we can wrap up. Who's doing chapter 6? Chapter 6.
Jeff. I'm only joking.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay, cool. We'll have Brett in 2 weeks.
I don't know if you want that.
We'd love to have Jeff do it. Actually, no, Alexis does a good job because her slides are always pretty. So, all right, we'll do Brett. Maybe Jeff can do chapter 7. I'll give you 4 weeks advance notice. All right, well, thank you, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.